reasons why I love you and none of them rhyme. 9 times 9, 81, Bonnie and Clyde. We got high and sat by the Wellington sign. I had one hell of a time, it's rock and roll to life.
Welcome to the Green Tea, Freedom and Truth channel. This is Tristan. It's good to have the Green Tea team back for this Wednesday, the 23rd of September edition of the video log. Today we are blessed and very happy to have Antoinette James, the Advanced New Zealand Public Party candidate for Taupo here for an interview. She has been she's been doing some very good behind the beehive videos on YouTube. Some of them have, I would say, gone viral, which have been very popular. She is also a published author of many books, both fiction and non-fiction. 3 titles in home education. Yeah. And also this book here, which was this released last year?
Beginning of 2019.
Beginning of 2019. We Are Revolting. And I join others from around the world pushing back the tyranny of globalist technocracy. That sounds like a great read. So you are also a mother.
I am.
Yeah.
I have 6 children.
Well done, well done. Yeah. And she is standing for the Advanced New Zealand Public Party as a candidate for Taupo. So Antoinette, what drew you to want to stand for the Advanced New Zealand Public Party?
Well, having written We Are Revolting, I understood the geopolitical tyranny that's even at the door of coastline of New Zealand. And I was really just pulling my hair out leading into these elections, wondering whether I'd even vote for the first time being an adult, and really worried about the future of my children. A friend sent me a video of Billy's, and initially I thought, no, another minor party, I won't worry about that. Another friend sent me the same video and I had a wee look at it, and for me straight away it was a no-brainer. We had found a party with policies that were, you know, by the people, for the people, of the people, and more importantly, making sure that we have a democracy and that we are not a globalized country, but an independent, sovereign country. So it was a no-brainer.
Yeah, yeah. And my feeling is too, I think a lot of people appreciated the way Billy was speaking, really calling out those UN agendas or the COVID-19 Health Response Act, the overreaches of government powers and that type of thing.
Yes.
Yeah, and a language that wasn't overly politicized. It was just straight talk to the people.
Yes. Yes.
Is that what did that resonate with you?
Yes. Oh, definitely. Yeah. You know, we've even before the COVID pandemic, I was very aware something big was about to happen. As I was talking to you earlier on, we started a little micro farm and grew our own vegetables, raised our own meat, because I knew something was happening. Didn't realize it was going to be a pandemic, but when it hit, I thought, well, there it is. So, and so when Billy was talking during that COVID lockdown of the overreach of our government, and for the first time in the history of man, we locked down the whole world, or at least the Western world. You know, it raises a lot of questions and rings a lot of warning bells.
Yeah, definitely. And as we now know, the first 9 days, possibly longer, was an unlawful act by the government on the people.
That's right.
Yeah. And we've been hearing quite a bit about Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030. And I think the average Kiwi person who maybe doesn't quite understand what these unelected agendas, these non-binding agreements that countries sign up to, how they affect people on an everyday level in their day-to-day lives. So would you just share a little bit about what the agendas are?
Yes, well, Agenda 21 really is is the narrow part of an hourglass, if I can use that illustration. It's built on decades of other documentation, and if you can think of all that documentation being sand in the top of the hourglass, and the Agenda 21 document, which is sizable, made up of feel-good words and lovely words like sustainability, which no one can deny is a wonderful way to live. But what people do not understand is the United Nations definition of sustainability, of resilience, of stakeholders, all these Agenda 21 words is quite different than how we, the average person, interpret those words. So as all these documents go way back to the 1960s, some of the secret societies and the elites are in documents like Iron Mountain Report, Our Common Future. Iron Mountain Report was a leaked document. We weren't supposed to see that, but Our Common Future is definitely Marxism 101, and that's the first time we hear sustainability. So we have hundreds of documents up in that top part of the hourglass of little grains of sand, and the actual document of Agenda 21 is almost like some kind of processing machine, and then out the bottom the sand falls, and that's all the documentation that really are national documentation, because the United Nations say think globally. That's all that big deposit of documents, many of them lies and fake news, come through Agenda 21, and then we need to act locally. So we have untold documents that are riddled through our communities and councils, saying how that Agenda 21 is going to work out for us in real time, and we see that today with the knockback on farms, the squashing of farms, the over-regulation, and even in every electorate. And our electorate here, we're now seeing all our water is going to be moved up and controlled centrally in Auckland. That's all part of United Nations Agenda 21. Total control, as if somehow that sustainability can only be made if it's controlled in Auckland. So it's word trickery, and people need to understand that.
Yes. I was just mentioning to you before that I was speaking to some people, yesterday and a few days ago, and they like the wording of Agenda 21, the way it is quite utopian and sounds like something that would be good to strive for.
Yes.
But underneath that, the fluffy words and the word salad, there's
the utopia, you can just look at, for example, the French Revolution, any revolution. The idea of power to the people sounds wonderful, but the average person doesn't understand that those above that are choreographing this whole revolution, or as Jacinda Ardern says with us, we're transitioning as a country towards having Agenda 21, Agenda 2030 totally rolled out. That's a whole different beast, and it puts us, we the people, with no control, and it destroys the middle class. So it'll be the elite, those that rule and govern, and there will be those that are ruled and governed. We'll be the peasantry. And in fact, Agenda 21 and the biodiversity document talked about us as peasants. There was such a human outcry, particularly in America, that perhaps a little bit more awake, that they removed that wording. But there it is. They were bold enough in the 80s to put that wording in.
Yeah, thank you. And I also really liked in your Behind the Beehive, you referred to it several times as global communism.
It is.
There's a
Yes, Alana Johnson, she's a lecturer and author and a speaker. She grew up in communist Romania. When she got to America and started to see some of these things rolling out, she now speaks about that, and she says this is global communism. She lived it in her own country, and now she's seeing it rolling out across the West from the United Nations down.
Yes. And what is Advanced New Zealand, the New Zealand Public Party, looking? What is their stand on these agendas that New Zealand has signed up for, and Jacinda Ardern has said that she would like New Zealand to be the first country to have these sustainable development goals rolled out. What is the Advanced New Zealand NZPP's stand on?
Well, our stand's pretty straightforward. It just means, firstly, we need to be an independent nation, and we need to be a sovereign nation. Once you have those two, as Billy says, like the bread and the sandwich, everything else falls into line. So if we have our independence, we may want to listen to United Nations suggestions and their ideas. Doesn't mean we're closed off to the rest of the world, but it means we, as an independent nation, have the choice whether we want to sign into these agendas. And as a sovereign nation, the United Nations or any outside dictate, whether that's the NGOs, which is a United Nations made corporation or whatever, it's a construct, United Nations construct, that these non-governmental organizations that we haven't voted in have an enormous say in the country. If we are a sovereign country, we can actually say, well, no, it's us, the people, that have the say. So that's basically Advance NZ's stance. And once you have those two as the bread, then you can fill in the filling of the sandwich with making sure we have a true democracy and not the sham of a democracy. Because in New Zealand, we think we're in a democracy, but we're not. We're in a corporate fascist society, really, where the big corps are telling us how we need to live, not our government who we elected. They're no longer our servants. They have a prior commitment to the United Nations and a prior commitment to the NGOs.
Yes. That's and it's interesting too. They're unelected and they're unaccountable. They're not accountable to the people in the sovereign nation. They're these outside remote bodies. And in my videos, I liken it. I'm a Star Wars guy. I liken it to the Death Star in the Star Wars movies, and is remotely controlling all the other planets with no real accountability or elected power from the people of these places. And just on the policy for the Advanced New Zealand Party, we will fully investigate and remove any and all UN agendas and agreements from New Zealand government and society if they do not serve the people of New Zealand.
That's right.
I had a question from a Green team member, and they were asking, does that mean that we would remove ourselves from all UN agendas and programs, or what does that actually mean?
Well, as I said before, I don't think we're saying that United Nations is necessarily something that we should completely remove ourselves from. I mean, there's an argument to be had there as well when you look at the corruption at the top of the UN and the Chinese Communist Party that are riddled through the UN. So there's definitely agendas there that's got nothing to do with the well-being of New Zealand. But I don't think we're going to just cast out the United Nations and everything and say, well, actually, we're going to be isolationists here in New Zealand. But what it does mean is that, for example, with the Migration Compact, where we don't choose who comes into New Zealand, we need to look at that. We've got 120 significant ethnicities in New Zealand now. And I think New Zealand as a country and as a multicultural country is a very good model, but we want to keep that. We don't want to find that it's going to spiral out of control and there'll be more polarization. So it's that sort of thing. Do we really want to have someone else tell us who and how many can come to New Zealand, particularly when we've got other major issues like infrastructural issues, housing issues, health issues, that we need to make sure that those infrastructures can support an increased population, and maybe a population that can't speak English, that can't even read in their own language. It's not closing the door to them, but it's giving we the people the choice how many different ethnicities come in and how they will be properly supported, because at the moment, I mean, that's not even happening. They're just thrown in, and it's very hard for big numbers to integrate. So we're seriously looking at that.
Yeah. Oh, that's a very good explanation. Thank you. Another thing which has been a big issue for a lot of Kiwis, and I think has been the awakening point for so many Kiwis, is the V19 Health Response Act, and the powers that the government has given themselves without following due process, without getting public consultation, without the people having input into this bill that oversteps our Bill of Rights 1990.
Yes.
What is the Advanced New Zealand position on this legislation? And
well, the Labour government's COVID response, we will be undoing. And if you go onto our website, you will see our policy on how we will be moving forward, making sure that the people of New Zealand are safe from a virus, that New Zealanders have choice. We have the Bill of Rights, but it's not solid. Our laws are over here and the Bill of Rights are over here. We want to make sure that the laws sit on the Bill of Rights, so that we have sensible laws that can't demand ownership of individual bodies. It is our choice, for example, whether we want to have a vaccine. And we're only hearing at the moment one very narrow corridor of scientific information. Even the World Health Organization have changed their tracks several times going from when COVID first came out. And we need something more solid. Any scientist or doctor that speaks out against the narrative of Jacinda Ardern's fairly severely punished one way or another through isolation or being vilified. And this is just the thin edge of the wedge. So when you have a government that is moving outside the legalities of a constitution, which we barely got, that's not a democracy anymore, that's a dictatorship. And so that becomes very serious. And particularly a government that's brazen and bold enough to say that they are the only source of truth. It just rings warning bells of Mao Zedong and Stalin and other tyrannies historically that we've had. And it should at least raise the eyebrow of every New Zealander.
Yes.
At the very least.
Yeah, and we're seeing people now marching. There's an awakening happening. People are just seeing where this, where it's gone, and where it could go to.
Yes.
Yeah. And I liked what you were saying earlier about having that, trusting our intuitive feelings, our conscience when we're seeing things that are not sitting right in our gut, in our heart, speaking up, investigating, not just taking it, being more active. And it's for me, that's how it's been, and I can sense you've had a bit of that too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we need to have critical thinking. We've got to remember that our government are supposed to be our servants, not our taskmasters, and that also ties into us as sovereign beings. We have the right to the pursuit of happiness. We have the right of freedom of speech. We have the right of movement. And when you start to have a government that says, no, actually, we're going to put you into home arrest. No, we're going to stop you saying these things on Facebook. Our fact checkers are really fact checkers for the government's narrative, not for the truth of the situation. When you start seeing those sorts of things happening, you're heading down the gurgler. You're in the vortex. You're going down.
Yeah. And we often see, like, people look at communist China and the censorship they have and the excessive government powers they have. And it's quite an easy to transpose it over to this is like almost the start of it.
Yes.
In our society.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was Ted Turner, the founder of CNN, CNN in America. He was asked about China, and as an elite, he said that China was one of their most successful experiments. So you might think China is a loose cannon doing their own thing, but they are coming under what the elites are dictating. And really, if we look at China now, that's what they're wanting rolled out. That's the experiment. It's working well. Now we're going to roll it out across the West.
Yeah.
But they won't. Not New Zealand. Advance NZ is here on our charges.
Yeah.
They're coming.
Yeah. That's really good. Another big issue for Kiwis, a lot of Kiwis, young people, is the housing unaffordability in New Zealand. There's studies that have been showing that a country with unaffordable housing is a country that a house costs more than 3 times the average median income. In New Zealand, we have places in New Zealand that housing is 10 times the average median income. What would Advanced New Zealand be looking at doing to allow housing to be more affordable for our young people, maybe, for all people?
Well, housing is knitted in, everything is knitted into each other very, very securely. So it's really going to be hard just to kind of pull things apart, tease it apart and see what we really need to do. Our housing policy will be out on our website shortly, but it's a very exciting one. And I can tell you it will make housing affordable for anyone that wants a house under our policy, that wants to buy a house to own their own home. Under our Advance NZ policy, they will have that ability to do it. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to be able to nominate the big house on the hill like any Kiwi, we start off with a house that needs to be done up. We put a bit of sweat equity into it. But the bottom line is that under our policies, every Kiwi that wants to own a house, we will put them on a pathway to do that. Now, I can't really say too much more at the moment, except that home ownership is a very important part of us being sovereign beings, and our home ownership is a very important part of us being free. And under the United Nations, when you look at some of the documentation that supports Agenda 21, home ownership is classified as unsustainable. That's taking us back to the Dark Ages, where you don't let the slaves own property, only the elite, the gentry own property, and the slaves don't. We are not slaves, we're independent, free people. And in New Zealand, under Advance NZ, you have the right to own your own home. It won't just be given to you on a platter like the rest of us. There will be mortgages involved, but we have pathways knitted in now that will make that available for any New Zealander that wants to buy a house.
I'm looking forward to hearing that.
Yeah, it's
that
exciting.
Policy. Yeah, because our current government came in on the major issue of affordable housing, and house prices have basically doubled in the over 3 years they've been in power. So housing has become more unaffordable. The gap between the rich and the poor, the haves and the have-nots, has been extended. Yep. And
this is Agenda 21. This is the reality. Put away all the feel-good words. This is the reality of Agenda 21.
Yeah. That is interesting. Also, on another point, it seems for me there's almost a spiritual battle going on between light and dark, good and evil. There's freedom and choice, and fear and control. And one of the policies which I think has gone a little bit unnoticed is for a lot of Kiwis, is the late term abortion bill that was brought in during just before we went into lockdown, where abortions can happen almost until birth, after 20 weeks. So there's been a huge change, and it's it's this bill that's been brought in. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay, well, firstly, we will be peeling that right back to where it was before. Advance NZ individual candidates have their own personal preference. For me, I'm anti-abortion straight across the board, but that is not something that a party should legislate. It's there now. This late-term abortion, I've heard people say, I don't think very many people will do that. It is happening, even over this baby's the wrong sex, I want it gone. There are some doctors now that are going to stand up and be conscientious objectors. They're appalled by it. So yes, we're going to peel that back. For me, abortion is just, as horrendous as it is just one part of the Agenda 21 depopulation, or at least the United Nations depopulation agenda that they have. So that's why abortion is depopulating on the front door of life, euthanasia is depopulating on the back door of life, and then there's a raft of other things specific to each ethnicity and specific to the West. We are cancer's skyrocketing. You know, we are all being depopulated one way or another because no government in New Zealand has underpinned our health with preventative measures. And so getting back to the abortion, one of the three things I think we can do, which doesn't need legislation, is stop the human body trade. Aborted baby pieces, tissue is a multi-billion-dollar industry that moves into the vaccine industry and other industries. If we choose to cut that off right now, there wouldn't be a market for aborted babies. The other thing is that over the last 30 years, we've slowly been moved away from a model that God has made us precious as individuals. Life is totally precious. We've moved to a Darwinian, Aristotelian worldview that we're no more than the cells we're made up of. So who cares if we remove the baby? That's why soon, really, the next step is going to be abortion up to 2 years of age. That is coming.
Yeah.
If we crush the market, if we start to say, hey, you are precious, you're made in the image of God. And also, when the abortion bill first came into New Zealand, it was to save women from the stigma of being unmarried mothers. That's no longer there.
Yeah.
So maybe now we support those mothers in different ways. And look maybe to adoption, and there's all sorts. There's the open adoption or closed adoption. That's, you know, all those choices can be talked about. But they say how you look after, how a country looks after the most vulnerable, it tells you a lot about a country. So we need to look after our most vulnerable, which is the unborn baby, and look after our elderly.
Yeah. And I liked what you're saying about like being a divine. We're divine beings. We're, you know, the highest manifestation of God's creation on the planet. And there's been a little bit of a push for this, almost an anti-human type push, that we in some way are the reason that the earth is polluted and the climate. And I've seen it with my previous job working with thousands of young people. I've seen it people coming from university, they in a way are feeling guilty about being a human and causing things, but we're here to, you know, do good in the world and, you know, bring light to the planet, which I think we need to connect with that heart center and value ourselves as people, you know, old people, babies, you know, all of us in society.
Yes, we've been told we're a cancer on this earth, haven't we? And we've been told that our resources are running out, where they're not. Oil is a renewable resource. It is not a fossil fuel. If you look back into the early 1900s with the Rockefeller industry there, it's not a fossil fuel. Water is a renewable resource. We're just not told about the primary. We know the reservoir, we know the rain. We're not told about the primary water. So as soon as we get our head in the right space, also the United Nations sits, its basic foundation is not a natural foundation, it's a spiritual foundation. And that spiritual foundation is pantheism. And pantheism promotes nature above man. So therefore, with United Nations biodiversity documentation, a stone has the same rights as a man. So that's where you come under international law. That's where you come under the state as God. Where if you come over here and you say, no, I'm a sovereign person under God, not the state, that puts human beings in their proper place, that we have more rights than a stone. We have more rights than a flowing river. And with Helen Clark of the Labour government bringing in the United Nations Common Core curriculum back in the early 2000s, that is teaching everyone Marxist mindsets and philosophies that man needs to diminish and nature needs to be promoted. Everything's back to front. And if that were so in New Zealand, we wouldn't be doing the 1080 drops and absolutely devastating our natural forests. So, you know, nothing is consistent. You hear the language, the narrative, but then you see what they're doing. It doesn't add up.
It's not congruent.
No.
So that's amazing, and it was good to dive deep onto the pantheism and these other things. If people want to contact you or follow you, what is the best way for them to do that moving forward towards the election, which is only in under 4 weeks' time? This is our time. We can make a stand, take action. How's the...
Well, I've got a Facebook page, Advance NZ Taupo Electric Facebook page. You can follow me on that, and you can message me on that. So as a candidate, that's probably the best way. As an author, if you go on to my website, AntoinetteJames.com, I have a Gmail address at the bottom there, and you can email me through that avenue. So I'm very approachable. I try and thus far have answered every message, every phone call that has come through. And it's really about sharing information and being there for each other, because it's about we the people. And that's what this whole movement up and behind Billy Tikahika is all about. Advance NZ has given us our mandate, that name, that branding to go into the elections on, so that we will get into office. And even when we're in office, although I may be a little bit further down the list, give me your candidate vote. I will be there and I will still be approachable, because it's about our voice. It's about decentralization and bringing decision making back to communities and back to families.
And do you have a YouTube channel?
I do. I've had a bit of problem. My first one was hidden in plain sight. I seem to be locked out of that. Google are not corresponding with me and haven't done so for months. I've very, very recently set up another one called Freedom's Ramparts, from our national anthem. I've taken the apostrophe before the Freedom's S out just to make it easier. The videos I'm putting on Facebook, I'm now putting up onto that YouTube channel. And then I'll also be taking all my old YouTube podcasts off my old YouTube channel and getting that back on, or putting it onto Freedom's Rampart.
Oh, very good. I will leave links to all of the everything I have access to in the description box below. Please like, share and subscribe to the channel, and share this video out. Network it. Let other people see, so they can see we do have options. It's not just red or blue, which are basically the same. Different colours of the same thing. We have other avenues that we can exercise our free will and choose. It has been very enjoyable having a conversation with you, and I look forward to hearing from you and seeing you in the run up to the election, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much.
Have courage, speak your truth, support each other, have faith and have fun. Peace out.